Hello everyone, thank you for clicking on this video. Today I wanted to make a video on teaching beginner flute playing. This is great for band directors, or maybe you're a beginning flute student, or maybe you're a flute teacher trying to learn how to teach beginners, and this video should help all of you. So I just wanted to make a video on things that you can do to help your beginner flute students. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is breathing. Breathing is obviously extremely important for flute playing, and it should definitely be one of the first things that you talk about to your brand new flute students. Obviously it's important, so something that I would say to them is I would ask, what makes the flute go? This was taught to me by somebody else, but I would ask, what makes the flute go? And usually the hopeful proper response is air makes the flute go, and that's why air is extremely important. And so I would just impress upon the student that really the number one thing that they should be focusing on is definitely their breathing and getting a good enough breath. So a fun way that you can actually teach breathing, or if you're a beginning flute student, if you want to work on your breathing to be able to play the flute, is what is called the vacuum cleaner breath. So what you do is you take your hand and you kind of make like an L. You can use either hand, doesn't really matter, but this is what it looks like from the side. So you take your hand and then you open your mouth, you place your fingers to your mouth, and your lips are going to go on your hand, open, and then you are going to breathe inwards air very quickly, and it'll make a sound kind of like a vacuum cleaner. So again, you're breathing inwards. A lot of the times when I teach this to students, they try to actually immediately breathe outwards, but that's not the result that you want. You want them to breathe inwards. So again, you're going to take your hand like this and just breathe inwards fairly quickly. If you breathe in too slow, you kind of don't get the sound that you want. So you want a very quick inward breath. And then other things should be happening during that breath. So you can also have them place one of their hands on their stomach, and they should feel their stomach expand pretty rapidly. Obviously there will be some chest movement, but you don't want a whole lot of extra chest movement where some students, when they try to breathe in, like their whole shoulders go back. So again, just have them sitting nice and tall and try to be relaxed when they do this, and so no extra muscles. But again, you want to breathe and have your other hand on your stomach, and you want to feel that outward expansion. And so some things that you want to make sure that while they're doing this is you want to make sure that their mouth is open, their throat is open, and really if they're not quite getting it, make sure that you can have them say "oh" first. Oh, that's really the breathing syllable that you want. Oh. So that will help get their throat open, and really to drop the jaw and get the back of the tongue out of the way. If the tongue is too high and they make more of an E sound when they breathe, you'll get a really high, like, hissing. So if you hear a lot of it's because the back of their tongue is too high. So you want their draw to drop, you want the back of the tongue to come down, you want the throat open so that it's a nice oh. And that will help get the air down into the stomach and take a full breath. Also, what you can have them do is you can have them take their hands and have them put their hands on the bottom of their rib cage, and they're gonna kind of like squeeze their rib cage a little bit, and then try to have them do the O breath or the vacuum cleaner breath, but while keeping their hands on their rib cage. So. And what they're going to do with their hands is they're going to feel on their ribcage that outward expansion. The air is going to, the sides of their waist is going to expand, and the air is going to really fill up their ribs so that they expand like a balloon pretty quickly. So again, that's putting the hands at the bottom of the rib cage and breathing in, fairly quickly, or they can even take a long breath. And breathe in just as much air as they possibly can, and down into the bottom of the rib cage, making sure that the rib cage has that outward expansion, and they're going to expand through even the back and through the front. Just like a balloon expands from all sides, right? So you don't want a balloon to lay flat and then only expand forwards. They're going to expand at all sides. So everywhere where they have rib, they also have lung, and those are places where they're going to expand. And so that's also why you may see the shoulders rise a little bit, you may see the chest rise a little bit as sort of like a reflex. Obviously, you don't want to have them, to cause undue tension by keeping those really in place. As long as it's sort of a natural rise, and not too much extra muscle movement or anything like that, then that's the goal that you're aiming for. So those are the couple ways that you can make sure that they're trying to take in enough air to be able to sustain a good flute sound. So you definitely want to do breathing exercises with them daily, continuing probably throughout, well, at least the first year, and still I even do breathing exercises all the time. And so you may think that it's too much to do breathing exercises every day, but I feel they are beneficial because they kind of really just wake up the airstream and wake up the lungs and show you that, breathing and playing for flute playing, you're not doing it all the time. That's not actually how it feels to take a breath when you're just trying to, sit there and watch TV. This is actually a different action, and it just kind of reminds the body, oh, this is how I'm going to breathe, this is how I'm going to support the breath, this is how I'm going to manage the air. So again, breathing exercises are important. I'm sure, you've done other breathing exercises, but really easy breathing exercise is, just putting on the metronome, maybe on like 72 or something like that, something that's like not too fast, not too slow, and then you breathe in for a certain amount of counts and breathe out for a certain amount of counts. And this is also great for really just centering your mental energy and really just focusing on the task at hand, focusing on breathing and not focusing on the other things that you've been doing during the day. So again, put on the metronome, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, do that a couple times. You don't want to exhaust yourself while you're doing this. If you do it too much, you can become like dizzy because you're like hyperventilating. But just do it a couple times. Maybe do 3 or 4 repetitions of in for 4, out for 4. And then you can, depending on what you want to do, you can actually change the amount of counts. So you can, if you want to breathe in for 3, out for 4, then in for 2, out for 4, 1, out for 4, or you can also, continue to breathe in for 4, but then expand the counts that you're playing for later on, like in for 4, out for 6, in for 4, out for 8, or you can even do, in for 2, out for 4, and then 8, 12, any sort of multiples that you want, and then just see kind of like how long your breath can last. So you can also put the metronome on 60 because that will count the seconds, and then have them do the vacuum cleaner breath and then blow out for as long as they can, but just a really small stream. It doesn't have to be the most air that they would ever blow out, and just kind of see how long they can blow out, and that will help get their air going. So again, those are just great to wake up the air and get the students ready, or get yourself ready for some flute playing. So the next thing I would like to talk about is working with the head joint. I think playing on the head joint alone is great for a beginning student within their first year of learning how to play the flute. I think whether it's their first day of the year or even at the end of the school year, it's definitely beneficial to continue to have them work on the head joint, and you can use it in a variety of different ways. So obviously when they're first learning how to play the flute, they would start off on the head joint and not the entire flute. Something that you would want to highly recommend or try to see if you could use in your classes or tell them to do while they're at home is definitely watch themselves play in a mirror, or try to play in a mirror. This will just help them to actually be aware of their facial muscles and have more of an awareness of what's going on in this area, because it's certainly a different skill set that they have never needed to use before. When have they needed to know exactly what their mouth is doing? And so for a young student that becomes quite difficult. So definitely using a mirror will help give them that sort of muscle awareness that they will need to play the flute. So again, if you are a beginning student and your band director has said to use a mirror, it's definitely a good recommendation that you should try to use. So when you're first teaching a student how to play on a head joint, obviously again you want to make sure that they get a good breath to be able to sustain a sound. And then also embouchure formation is important. Placement of the head joint is important. So we'll talk about placement of the head joint first. So again, you have this tone hole here. This should be parallel to the floor, so the hole should be facing upwards. The way that you want them to place it on their face is it's going to go right in this sort of nook of their chin. So you can have them kind of take a finger and feel where that kind of indentation is right below the lip, right there. So that's exactly where the head joint should go, again with the tone hole facing upwards towards the ceiling or parallel to the floor, whichever you would like to tell them. And then obviously they're going to blow across the tone hole. Some way that you can kind of get them to make a good flute embouchure is you can have them say poo, but have it feel like they're putting on some chapstick. Poo, poo. So there can be a couple ways to get them to make this face. You can kind of have them say poo, poo, and sort of say but blow outwards. So you don't necessarily have to have them to say poo, because they might be too kind of forward, but still the lips should be a little bit forward. So it feels like you're putting on chapstick, but again, the lips are forward. They're generally kind of flat, but you don't want too much tension in the face. You want their lips to be mostly relaxed. So even though they're trying to do this skill that they have never done before, and it's kind of frustrating because they may not be making a sound, just tell them it's okay. We're experimenting. We're trying different things here, and they don't really need to overwork the lips a lot. But most of the time, I can get them to make a sound by saying and then blowing outwards. Poo, poo. So, and you can watch my lips. And so obviously first I'm just starting the sound with my lips, since they may not know articulation. And that's kind of the quick version of how to teach them to make a flute sound. Definitely you can probably find other videos on that, but that's not really what I want to go over too much in this video. So other sort of warm-ups that you can do with them is, after the breathing portion of playing in for 4, out for 4, they can also breathe in for 4, out for 4. So it would sound something like this. In. And again, it probably sounds like that because, their lips are trying to start the sound, so then obviously you want to involve the tongue. So they would still say but they would release the air with the tongue. So the tongue starts on the roof of the mouth or on the top part, right where the gum meets the teeth, starts the sound there, then releases the air and comes down into the mouth. Almost as if you're saying two, but the tongue needs to start very forward in the mouth, almost right behind the top teeth. Two. So it sounds like this. So that's kind of an obvious exercise that you can do with them. And as they progress, you can vary the amount of time that they are breathing and playing for, just as you would with the breathing exercise. You can also do echo rhythms where you play a certain rhythm and they echo it back. So for say you'd have the metronome on and you'd play, and they would play it back to you, and then you can switch. That was quarter, quarter, eighth, eighth, quarter, and you can switch which count you put the eighth notes on so that they can really learn how to use their ears and sort of mimic that. But that's definitely, again, things that you can do on the head joint. Other things that you can do on the head joint that are also useful are you can make the low head joint sound by fully covering, taking your palm, fully covering the bottom of the head joint and making the low as opposed to and it's very important that earlier on that they are able to make these two sounds, the closed head joint, the open head joint, the lower and kind of the middle sound. So the open one is more of like a middle register, so this feels more or less just like blowing kind of across the head joint. Takes very little effort. If they can't make that sound, then often maybe they're not using enough air. So I would check, the air stream, not necessarily the air angle. The air angle does matter, but a lot of the times it's just the amount of air that they're using when they're first starting off. But if they're not making that open flute sound easily, then that's fine. Then they can try to make the low flute sound. And that may just mean that their top lip is too far over their bottom lip, which is actually kind of great for the low register playing. And then when they're trying to play open, they can sort of pout that bottom lip a little forward to be able to make that sound. So when you are making a low flute sound, you definitely want your top lip to come up and over to angle the air down. You're going to use your top lip to angle the air sort of down to the ground. And then when you're playing the higher one, you can actually bring the jaw forward, bring the teeth forward, and bring that bottom lip forward. That's kind of an extreme exaggeration there. But that's how you change the air angle. You can actually change it by really covering with your top lip or bringing your bottom jaw in and out. And so a lot of the times changing angles with beginner flute players, I have them take their arm and kind of trace their arm up and down with their airstream. So you can kind of take the finger and follow the airstream up and down with the finger against the hand. Some of you have probably used the Numo Pros where it's like this plastic head joint that has the built-in fans. That's definitely a great visual to use. However, the budget version is to just kind of have them extend their arm, have their finger go up and down the arm, and have their airstream follow it, obviously without moving the head. Sometimes they're going to want to try and do this, but obviously they should keep the head stationary while they trace that up and down the arm. And so that can help them understand how to make the different flute sounds on the head joint. So that's kind of a tip there. So there's actually 4 different sounds that you can make on the head joint. We have the 2 sounds that I already went over, the covered and the open. And then we actually have 2 more sounds that we can make. These are. So all together we have. Those are the 4 sounds. So we have a low covered, and we actually have a higher covered. Same with the open. So you actually want to encourage them to just try and make whatever sounds that they can early on. This will help teach them to play in the different registers and have sort of more awareness of what their lips are doing. Again, they may not be able to achieve these sounds, and the reason why they wouldn't, or maybe you are having a hard time of getting all 4 of these sounds, is because you aren't actually changing anything to do with your lips. To make a different sound, you have to actually physically change what you are doing. And you might think that you're changing enough, but most of the time when I see students, they're actually not really changing much anything here to be able to make those different sounds. So again, I would remind them of how to really angle the air and to try that. So for the lower ones, again, you're going to be angling the air down at the ground. This one's a bit more across. But for the upper 2 sounds, you're actually going to really pout the bottom lip, and you really want the lips to feel like they're coming forward and out. So they're very pressed, kind of almost pressed together, but as if you have like a string kind of pulling them away. And you can also see that my aperture, the hole between my lips, that size is also changing. You can observe that while I play. But really, I would focus more on the air angle and, either for the low, making sure that that top lip is feeling like it's kind of wrapped around that bottom lip and covering, and really letting the air be pointed downwards. And then for the upper sounds, you can bring the jaw forward, you can pout the bottom lip and let both lips come forward and out like you are using a coffee straw to blow straight against the wall in front of you. So that's how I would encourage students to really explore the different head joint sounds so that they can be comfortable making all 4 of those sounds and play comfortably in the different flute registers. So there's also kind of a fun game that you can use to really encourage students to work on playing their head joint. And you can actually teach them how to play like a little song on the head joint, and it involves changing the pitch by putting your finger in the end of the head joint. So when you do that, so I'm actually changing the pitch right there, and you can actually kind of teach them how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. I haven't done this in a while, so we'll see how it goes, but they can. Or Hot Cross Buns, any sort of 3-note song, but basically your starting pitch is nothing, and then your second one is maybe around this kind of first joint right there in the finger, and then your third is kind of inserted to that, to the knuckle. There you go. Yeah, again, you can do Mary Had a Little Lamb or Hot Cross Buns, and that will, you can also practice the articulation, tonguing the notes, and playing their first song pretty early on in their studies without even having to put the flute together. And so that can kind of get rid of anything kind of distracting with playing the whole flute. You know, when you're a beginner and you have the flute together for the first time, you don't really know how to hold it, it feels pretty heavy, and then all of a sudden you need to wiggle your fingers and you don't quite, you know, you're trying to multitask of moving the fingers, trying to think about breathing, and trying to think about the notes. Maybe there's rhythm, so you're trying to tap your foot. So there's a lot of really brain processes going on when you're first starting to learn, but you know, really you can just kind of get them ready to go and playing on the head joint first before you sort of move them over to the full flute and teaching them how to put it together. And any sort of issues with holding the flute usually comes from not being able to balance the flute properly. So definitely sort of think about that when you are teaching. But yeah, again, you know, you can have them play a song on the head joint, and that would be really, really fun. So the last thing that I will go over today is actually sort of the beginning stages of vibrato production. It seems that vibrato can be sometimes difficult to teach for especially maybe band directors who aren't flute players and haven't really used vibrato before and don't really understand exactly how it works. But you can actually start teaching and laying the groundwork and foundation for vibrato production pretty early on within their flute development. So I wouldn't actually use the word vibrato at first, but you can definitely, again, start laying the groundwork early. And I would actually start off by doing a simple head joint exercise for this, and it basically involves using different dynamics on the head joint. So this isn't something that you would really roll out the first week, but maybe once they can make a steady sound and reliable sound on the head joint without really having to fiddle around with, you know, any angles or anything like that, once they really can, you know, play the head joint, that's when you can start introducing this. So it's very important to get them playing at different dynamic levels within the first couple months or so when learning how to play the flute. So first, I would have them do an exercise where they play loud, following by a soft sound. And so you could have them play loud for 4 counts, breathe for 4, then soft for 4, breathe for 4, then loud, then soft. So I'll show you that. Soft. Loud. Soft. And then you can also, you can actually also do articulation exercises where you have them like tongue for 4-quarter notes on this. So really you can teach articulation starting on the head joint. But really, again, I would just like to go back and forth between loud and soft. So then I would decrease the amount of time between playing loud and soft. So maybe 2 counts playing, 2 counts rest, 2 counts soft, 2 counts rest. So I'll play that. 2, loud, go. Soft, go. Loud, go. Soft, go. Loud, go. Soft, go. Okay, and then I would actually have them play loud to soft 2, and then rest 2. So now they're putting the loud and soft together. 1, 2, ready, go. Rest 2. Rest 2. Rest 2. And you can have them tongue in between, or you actually can have them connect it. So what we're going to do is have them connect it and see if they can play loud 2, soft 2, and have that sound connected. 2, ready, go. Rest, 2. Okay, and then you can actually have them play loud, soft, loud, soft. And it's okay if the pitch changes, because vibrato is actually a fluctuation of pitch, going sharp, coming back to middle, flat, sharp, flat, sharp, flat. So now I would actually do kind of slow quarter notes, where they would sound like, and I would actually call these maybe sirens. That's what I would call a siren, where you're going up, down, and you can have them play loud, soft, again. So again, you're connecting the loud, soft, and that's going to encourage that pitch fluctuation. So that's quarter notes of loud, soft, and then you can have them, once they're really comfortable with that, have them do it in eighth notes. It would sound like this. So again, your abs are actually really going to help in this. So on the loud, they're actually going to tighten and really support that sound. That wow, wow, wow. That's you know, using the support to be able to play loud, and then that's going to influence that pitch fluctuation. And then once they can do it in eighth notes, then try it in triplets. And really what I'm thinking about, if that's sort of a difficult progression for them, you can have them say ha 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 ha. So really I'm connecting the sound, but I'm pulsing, or I'm accenting that triplet subdivision, and I'm pulsing it and supporting it with my abs. So it's kind of like my abs are doing little kicks, ha 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 ha. And you can have them say that and put their hands on their stomachs to feel that little stomach kick, ha 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 ha. So again, it sounds like. So that's the beginning of stage of vibrato for the first year. At the end of the first year, you definitely want to aim for them to be able to play triplet sounding vibrato. And then once they progress, maybe second year, that's when they can do faster vibrato, like 16 notes. And then maybe even like 6-tuplet vibrato. So that you're able to hear that. And then through that progression, that's a really sort of like mechanical way to practice supporting with the airstream. So this, even if they don't achieve like a natural sounding vibrato, which is really what you're aiming for, to be like a singer's vibrato, this pulsing vibrato will help them really learn how to control their airstream. The controlling of the airstream will actually help to when they do want to produce a natural opera singer like vibrato. And so if you do want to understand vibrato further, I would suggest looking up how to produce vibrato, or how vocalists would produce vibrato, and that's really the same, you know, on the flute, so you can really transfer all of that information. But when they're first beginning, it's very important that they learn how to support their sound. This pulses exercise, or what I like to call maybe sirens at first. At first it kind of starts off as sirens, and then you can call it this pulsing exercise, pulsing vibrato exercise. That's going to help give them the foundation that they need to be able to switch over to a very beautiful, natural produced vibrato where they don't have to feel like they're working so hard and pulsing anything, that they can achieve more like a singer's vibrato. And that happens when the vibrato actually also gets faster and shallower sounding. So at first when they're doing it, they're not going to want to make much of a change. Like you ask them to play sirens and they may not quite get it at first, but definitely encourage them to make as much as a dramatic difference in the sound as possible between their louds and their softs, or their sharps and their flats, of really fluctuating that pitch and learning how to actually kind of control that airstream is very important. And teaching that early on, again, will help them have a better tone in the long run. A lot of tone issues are due to just purely not being able to support the sound. And when they're first starting off, they may have a very sort of soft sound that is under-supported, and it's not as confident as it should be. So you can actually just keep encouraging your students to play louder, bigger breaths, playing louder, bigger breaths, playing louder, pretty much throughout the year, so that they can actually sort of build up that muscle function and bodily awareness to be able to just produce a really full sounding flute sound, which is what you're aiming for, especially throughout working through that first year. And most of the time, again, it's due to air. It's not necessarily due to lip formation. If it is due to lip formation, then just encourage them to experiment. Really, they're going to keep, if they're not liking how they are sounding, then really they need to actually experiment and try different things. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect to sound better, it's not really going to help you. So again, working with a mirror and experimenting with, maybe experimenting with rolling in and rolling out of the head joint ever so slightly while you're playing. So you can really feel where the flute needs to be positioned. That's an important. Again, they can experiment with the jaw placement or the blowing angle. So those are some things that they can actually really just play around with on their own and see what they need to do to achieve the best sound. And that's going to encourage, again, just great full tone. And using that mirror is also important in this stage in their learning. So really all of these tips are to give them the best foundation that they can just to make a sound. And all they really need to do, again, is just practice breathing and working with the head joint. And really that's the most important components that you can work on in your beginner flute class. Aside from, learning pieces of music, that's kind of the other half of the story there. But pretty much you should be able to teach that if, you have played another instrument, or, if you're a flute student watching this, then definitely, this is more of how to just make a great flute sound. So thank you for watching this video. I hope anything helped you from this video. Maybe it's a lot of things that you have heard before, but hopefully I could help. Thank you. Bye.